There is a moment. Maybe it happened last night. Maybe it happened 3 weeks ago. Maybe it's happening right now while you're watching this. A moment where you picked up your phone to check if he texted. And when he didn't, something in your chest just dropped. And you asked yourself the same question you've probably asked 100 times this month. Does he still think about me? Or is it just me who's still stuck here? I want you to sit with that question for a second, because by the end of this video, you are not going to answer it the way you think you will. You're going to answer it in a way that changes everything. Not just about him, about you. Here's what nobody tells you about this situation. Whether you want him back or whether you're ready to finally let go, the path forward is exactly the same. That's the strange trick. Winning him back and moving on are not two different roads. They're the same road, walked by two different women at two different points, using two different amounts of courage. And today, I'm going to show you that road, step by step, so that by the time you finish this video, you already know exactly which direction you're walking in. So let's start with the truth, the real one, not the comforting one your friends tell you at 2 a.m. Right now, you are probably replaying everything. The last conversation, the last fight, the way he looked at you when he said it was over, or the way he didn't look at you at all. You're replaying his words, searching them for hidden meaning like a detective looking for a clue that was never there. You're checking his social media more than you'd ever admit out loud. You're wondering if the girl in that one photo means something, or nothing, or everything. You're exhausted from thinking, and yet you can't stop thinking. You lie down at night and your body is tired, but your mind is running a marathon it never asked to run. And underneath all of that, there's a quieter, harder question. Am I the problem? Was I too much? Was I not enough? Did I love him wrong somehow? That question is the one that really keeps you up. Not, does he miss me? That one's almost comfortable compared to this one. This one feels like it's about your worth, not just your relationship. I need you to hear this clearly, because it matters more than anything else I'll say today. Missing someone is not evidence that you did something wrong. Missing someone is evidence that you're a person capable of love. That's it. That's all it proves. A woman named Farah once told me that after her engagement ended, she spent 4 months convinced she'd sabotaged the best thing that ever happened to her. 4 months of quiet, private grief, replaying every conversation, looking for the moment she ruined it. And then one day, her sister said something so simple, it cracked the whole thing open. She said, "Farah, you're not grieving your mistakes. You're grieving the future you built in your head." That sentence changed everything for Farah. And I want it to do the same for you. Because here's the pain amplified. And I'm not going to soften it, because you don't need softening right now. You need someone to actually say it. The hardest part of a breakup isn't losing the person. It's losing the version of your future that included them. You weren't just attached to him. You were attached to the Tuesday nights, the inside jokes, the plans you hadn't said out loud yet but were quietly building in your mind, the wedding you hadn't planned but had definitely imagined, the way you introduced him in your head to people you hadn't even met yet. All of that dies at once. And grief doesn't know how to process a future. It only knows how to process what's already happened. So your mind keeps trying to mourn something that technically never existed. And that's why it feels so disorienting. You're not just sad, you're confused. You're grieving a memory that hasn't happened yet. And on top of that grief, there's the fear. The fear that you'll never feel that particular kind of connection again. The fear that you're somehow behind now, that everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck replaying a relationship that already ended. The fear that if you do get him back, it will happen the wrong way, out of desperation instead of respect, and it will fall apart again in 6 months. Or the fear, if you're trying to move on, that moving on means erasing what you had, like it never mattered, like you're supposed to just flip a switch and stop caring about someone you loved for years. None of that is weakness. I want you to actually hear that sentence. None of that is weakness. It's the natural cost of caring about someone deeply. The size of your pain is just the receipt for the size of your love. You don't get one without the other. Now here's the reframe. The one thing that changes everything. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You have been asking the wrong question this entire time. You've been asking, how do I get him to want me again? And that question, as understandable as it is, keeps you powerless because it puts the entire outcome in his hands. It makes you a passenger in your own love story. But there is a different question, a much more powerful one, and it is the actual answer whether you end up back together or not. The question is this: how do I become the version of myself that doesn't need his validation to feel whole? That question doesn't just help you move on. It's also, ironically, the single most attractive thing you can do if you want him back. Because people are not drawn to chasing. They are drawn to wholeness. Think about the people in your life you respect the most. It's never the person who's begging for approval. It's the person who's steady, who knows their worth, who doesn't shrink or perform for anyone's attention. That same principle is exactly what determines whether this ends in reconciliation or in a stronger, freer version of you standing alone. Either way, you win, because the trick isn't winning him back. The trick is winning yourself back first. Let me give you the analogy that makes this click. Picture an iceberg. Most people only ever see the tip, the 10% that pokes above the water. That's the relationship. The dates, the texts, the arguments, the reconciliation. That's the visible part. But underneath the surface, there's this massive structure holding the whole thing up. That's your self-worth. Your sense of identity outside of him. Your ability to feel okay in a quiet room without checking your phone. When that underwater part is strong, the tip of the iceberg, meaning the relationship itself, can weather any storm because it's supported by something solid. But when that underwater structure is cracked, when your entire sense of okayness depends on whether he texts back, then the tip becomes fragile. It cracks under the slightest pressure. Most people spend all their energy trying to fix the visible 10%, trying to say the right thing, send the right text, look a certain way in a certain photo. But the real work, the work that actually changes your life, happens underwater, where nobody's watching. Now let's talk about how you actually do that. Because insight without action is just a nice feeling that fades by Thursday. The first core lesson is this: stop researching him and start researching yourself. I know how tempting it is to analyze his behavior, to decode his last message, to figure out what he's thinking. But every minute you spend trying to understand him is a minute you're not spending understanding yourself. There was a woman I'll call Maya who went through a breakup at 29 after a 6-year relationship. For the first month, she was a full-time detective. She had theories about why he left, theories about the girl he was seen with, theories about whether he regretted it. One night, exhausted, she wrote down everything she'd learned about him that month. Then she wrote down everything she'd learned about herself. The second list was blank, completely blank. That blank page became the turning point of her recovery. She realized she had spent 6 years becoming an expert on someone else's needs, moods, and preferences, and 0 years becoming an expert on her own. So she started small. She began journaling 3 questions every night. What made me feel alive today? What drained me today? What do I actually want, separate from what he wanted? Within weeks, she wasn't thinking about him less because she was forcing herself to. She was thinking about him less because her attention had somewhere better to go: herself. Here's a line worth remembering. The version of you that gets him back and the version of you that doesn't need him back are the exact same woman. The second core lesson is about the no contact period, but not for the reason you've probably heard. Most people think no contact is a strategy to make him miss you, a kind of manipulation to trigger his interest. That's a shallow, fragile way to use it. And honestly, it usually backfires because you can feel when someone's silence is a performance rather than real peace. The real purpose of no contact is nervous system regulation. Your brain after a breakup, especially one that ended suddenly or with unresolved feelings, is in a mild state of withdrawal. Genuinely, biologically similar to the early stages of quitting a habit. Every text, every profile check, every just seeing how he's doing moment gives your brain a small hit of relief, followed by a bigger crash. It's the same mechanism as checking your phone for a notification that isn't there. Think of it like a storm. If you keep running back outside every time there's a break in the rain, you never actually get to see if the storm has passed, and you get soaked over and over. No contact isn't about punishing him or performing indifference. It's about staying inside long enough for the storm in your own mind to actually pass, so you can see clearly again. A man named Bilal actually went through this from the other side, wanting his ex back after he was the one who made the mistake. He spent weeks sending long apology texts, showing up at places she'd be, trying every angle to get one more conversation. Every attempt made her retreat further, understandably, because it read as pressure, not peace. It wasn't until he stopped entirely, genuinely stopped, focused on his own health, his own friendships, his own healing, that she reached out first, months later, not because he manipulated her into it, but because the version of him she encountered again was someone who had actually changed, not someone performing change for an audience of one. Quote-worthy line right here. Silence isn't a strategy to win someone back. Silence is the space where you become someone worth coming back to. The third core lesson is about identity, and this is the one most people skip because it's the hardest and the most important. When you're in a relationship for a long time, your identity naturally starts to include the other person. You become we instead of just I. That's not wrong. That's actually part of healthy intimacy. The problem is what happens when the we disappears and you haven't kept any part of your I alive underneath it. This is where the gardening analogy comes in. Imagine you plant a garden, and over time, one tall plant grows right next to a much smaller one. And eventually, the smaller plant is completely in its shadow. It's still alive down there technically, but it hasn't seen direct sunlight in years. So it's pale, stunted, barely growing. That smaller plant is you. The parts of your personality, your hobbies, your friendships, your goals that quietly got shaded out over the years because the relationship took up so much light. The breakup, as brutal as it feels, is also, strangely, the first real sunlight that plant has seen in a long time. You get to ask yourself questions you haven't asked in years. What did I love doing before him? What friendships did I let fade? What version of myself did I put on pause? There was a woman named Nadia who 6 months after her breakup realized she hadn't painted anything in 3 years, even though painting used to be the thing that made her lose track of time as a teenager. She picked up a brush again, almost as an experiment, expecting nothing. Within 2 months, she'd sold her first piece to a stranger online. She told me later that the breakup didn't just end a relationship, it accidentally returned an entire piece of her identity that had been buried under someone else's shadow. Here's the line. You didn't lose yourself when he left. You lost yourself long before that. He leaving just turned the lights back on. The fourth core lesson is about the difference between longing and love, because this is where most people get confused, and it's the exact confusion that determines whether reaching out to your ex is wise or self-destructive. Longing feels like love. It has the same physical intensity, the same racing thoughts, sometimes even the same tears. But longing is often just your brain missing the routine, the predictability, the comfort of something familiar, even if that something wasn't actually good for you. Real love, the kind worth rebuilding, isn't measured by how badly you want someone back at 11 at night when you're lonely. It's measured by how you feel about them on a calm Tuesday afternoon when you're not lonely at all, when your life is actually going fine. If the pull toward him is strongest exactly when you're at your loneliest, that's usually longing. If the respect and warmth toward him remains, even when your life is full and steady, that's closer to real love, the kind that might actually be worth exploring again, carefully and on equal footing. Think of it like mountain climbing. Longing is wanting to reach the summit because you're exhausted and you just want the climbing to stop. Love is wanting to reach the summit because you actually love the mountain. One of those motivations gets you through the last brutal stretch. The other one gets you to quit the moment it gets hard again, because you were never climbing for the right reason in the first place. The fifth and final core lesson is the one that ties everything together, and it's about self-respect as the actual deciding factor in how this story ends. Whether he comes back or not is brutally, partly out of your control. But how you show up for yourself during this entire process is completely in your control. And that's the part that actually determines your future, not just with him, but with every relationship that comes after him, including the one you have with yourself. Self-respect looks like not sending the 3 a.m. text you'll regret by morning. It looks like not comparing your worst days to his curated highlight reel online. It looks like grieving fully instead of numbing the feeling with distractions that leave you emptier afterward. It looks like giving yourself permission to have a bad week without deciding that the bad week means you're failing at healing. A woman named Iman put it best when she told me, "I stopped asking if he'd come back, and I started asking if I'd be proud of the woman he'd be coming back to." That single shift in focus changed the entire texture of her healing. She wasn't performing recovery for an imaginary audience of him. She was actually recovering for herself, and it showed in everything: her posture, her voice, the way she started laughing again at things that had nothing to do with him. Here's the line to remember, maybe the most important one in this entire video. The goal was never to prove to him that you're worth staying for. The goal is to prove to yourself that you're worth choosing, with or without him. So let's talk about what you actually do starting today, right now, after this video ends. First, give yourself a real no contact window, not as a manipulation tactic, but as genuine recovery time. 30 days minimum if you can manage it. Use that time to regulate, not to perform. Second, start your own version of Maya's exercise. Every night, write down one thing you learned about yourself that day. Not about him, about you. Third, find the plant that's been living in the shadow. What did you love before this relationship took up all the light? Give it 30 minutes this week. Just 30 minutes. Fourth, when the ache hits at 11 at night, don't ask, "Does he miss me?" Ask instead, "Am I becoming someone I'm proud of, regardless of his answer?" Let that question replace the old one completely. Fifth, and this one is non-negotiable, stop checking his social media, his mutual friends, his location if you still have it. Every check is a small betrayal of your own healing. It's not weakness to want to check, it's just not useful. And you deserve useful right now, not just understandable. And here's the truth I want to leave you with: the emotional close of everything we've talked about today. If he comes back, he will be coming back to a woman who healed with or without him. And that kind of woman is impossible to take for granted twice. And if he doesn't come back, you will still have built something no one can ever take from you again. A relationship with yourself that doesn't collapse the moment someone else walks away. That's not a consolation prize. That's the actual prize. The relationship was always going to end at some point. Every relationship does eventually, one way or another. But the relationship with yourself is the one you're in for the rest of your life. And today, right now, watching this, you just took the first real step toward making that one unbreakable. You are not behind. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are simply a woman standing at the edge of a story that hasn't finished being written yet. And the pen, it turns out, was always in your hand. If this video reached you exactly when you needed it, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because there's a whole series of these waiting for you, built for exactly the moment you're standing in right now. Tap that like button if even one sentence in this video felt like it was written just for you. And before you go, tell me in the comments right now, one thing you're choosing for yourself today, not for him, not for anyone else, just for you. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not as alone in this as it feels tonight.